Hey guys, welcome back to the course. Okay, so a few lectures ago, we learned how to draft an email and send it out to our network. Now in this lecture, we're gonna flip that script a little bit, and now we're going to network with new people. How terrifying. Why do we have to meet new people? Well, because then we can sell them our thingamabob. This lecture is, yes, all about going to in-person events. Yes, I know what you're thinking right now. They are mostly awful and can feel like a waste of time. I agree. But that's where I have to kind of stop you because they are an easy way to get your first 10 done, and you can do it in one go if you do it right. Now, events come in all shapes, sizes, and dollar amounts. Because we're still getting our first 10 customers, I'm gonna stick with the smaller meetups rather than those big conferences or the big trade shows. Now, those bigger events can be a huge time suck and are usually way too expensive early on when you're just trying to get 10 customers. That stuff just doesn't work. I wouldn't suggest it. If you're not already familiar with the website meetup.com, you should be. It's just spelled meetup.com. Check it out. I'm pretty sure there wasn't a thing called a meetup before that site existed. At least I'm assuming that's the case because I get a squiggly line underneath the word every time I try to type it in. Yes, I know what you're thinking, and yes, I'm reading off a script. Meetup.com is pretty much what you're probably thinking it is. It's a site for finding different groups or people who physically meet up in person, or in internet speak, IRL, as in AFK, BRB, TTYL, TGIF, Fridays. There are meetup groups for just about anything you can think of, like startups, music production, running groups, book clubs, sports, and very, very specific hobbies. Like for instance, this group I just found called Chicks with Sticks. I'm not sure where your mind goes when you hear that name, but I'm willing to bet you didn't think of a meetup group for women who are hardcore into crocheting, Meetup is totally free, and once you sign up, there's a search feature where you can look for events near you. Remember that guy really just doing an awful job of selling premium dog biscuits to his friend Dave that we covered earlier? Well, he should go on Meetup and look for dog-related meetups instead of pressuring Dave with a horribly written email. I did a search for dogs within a 25-mile radius of San Francisco, and well, there's a ton of them. Dogs, not meetups. Focus. Like for instance, this group, Everyone Loves a Corgi in San Francisco group. Sure, except for the 1,408 members of the San Francisco French Bulldog meetup. I'm assuming they don't love corgis. There's even a Startups Plus Dogs meetup group because of course there is, it's San Francisco. Another great site for finding events is Eventbrite, which for all intents and purposes is really the same thing as Meetup. You can search for stuff within a certain area, similar to Meetup, although the stuff on Eventbrite tends to be more like organized events where they're selling tickets. I've even seen some meetup groups that end up selling tickets to their meetups on Eventbrite. It will probably take you a little bit longer to find your people on Eventbrite, but it's worth checking out and at least giving it a search because you can filter it down by the category really easily and even by the type of event if you know you prefer one over the other. Okay, so go explore both Meetup and Eventbrite for a little while, and you're bound to find something relevant to your business in some area or city that's close enough. Remember, you're not searching for events within the same industry necessarily. You're looking for groups of people that fit your target customer category. That category we established way back when in like section 2. Now, I know the idea of going to an event and talking to random strangers probably sounds absolutely terrifying to a lot of you. So we're gonna talk a little bit, and I'm gonna give you a couple ways to strike up conversations at these events without really having to think about it. It might be easier at something like a corgi meetup, since I'm guessing all they talk about is their corgis. But if they're going to, say, a business-related meetup, it's gonna be a little bit different. Corgi meetups are obviously just a little bit easier, especially if you're selling dog biscuits like our misguided email master. Really, you just buy a corgi, obviously, and you go to the meetups with said corgi, you hand out cards, and when you're done, you don't need the corgi anymore, so you just euthanize it, and then you probably at that point have gotten at least 10 customers. Networking at events can feel forced and awkward at times, but the thing is, when you're at one of these events, almost everyone is there to network as well. So keep that in mind, and it will make you actually feel quite a bit less awkward because everybody feels awkward. Now the game here at a meetup is really quite simple. You all have a common interest. Well, at least they do, and don't yet realize you're more like a wolf in sheep's clothing. They want to talk about their interest and will have themed mini events that are based around the same interest. Really, all you have to do is make contact with anyone and then ask them one of two automatic things that pretty much always works. Number one, what do you do for a living? And number two, what are you working on? Once you get that hook in their mouth, it's really actually quite easy to navigate to the problem that your business or product is trying to solve. Once you get a little bit about how their day works or what they do, it's completely normal to just ask them either, do you have the problem I'm trying to solve? Or ask them if they can give you feedback on your project. It's completely normal and completely relevant at that point in the conversation. At this point, there are just a couple things you need to make sure you do. I strongly suggest you have business cards or some sort of way of getting people your contact information easily. When you exchange your information, that's by far the easiest point at which you can then later contact them and then try to introduce your product if you haven't. In person, they're not going to obviously buy whatever you sell, but it's a good opportunity to get feedback. But then afterwards, it's really easy to just follow up. Remember, if you respond too early, they'll realize you're desperate and they won't want to go on a candlelit dinner with you. Now, when you do respond, just say, hey, you showed interest in my product. Here it is before I forget to send it to you. Then at the end of the email, you can ask for more feedback if you want. That's really it. Find groups that correspond to who you're trying to sell to on meetups specifically, then just go to one or two of these. You can easily strike up a conversation where you just try to bring up what they do or what they are working on. From there, it's pretty inevitable that you'll talk about your project, and if it's not going in that direction, you can still just ask them. What do you ask them? Well, you just ask them if they can either give you feedback or whether they experience the same problem. It kind of makes sense. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that these groups regularly have presentations and group discussions. If you're smart and motivated enough, you can introduce yourself through one of these and talk about what you do. That makes it really a whole lot easier to find the ones that actually might be interested in what you're saying. All right, so now you got a few ideas. If you're still stuck on it, just Google around. There are a ton of blog posts on networking out there that should give you some ideas. A lot of them are, and by a lot of them, I mean all of them are garbage pretty much. But if you sift through them, you can sometimes find some pointers that are actually pretty helpful. And if that doesn't work, hit up the Q&A section in our Slack. Okay, so if you're not still upset about that corgi joke, I will see you in the next lecture.